Her father died before harvest. The cowboy finished the field and said, "It's done." The twin suns were sinking low over the dusty plains of the frontier planet, casting long, sharp shadows across the golden fields. Ilara stood at the edge of the farmland her father had spent his life tending. The crops glowed faintly in the fading light, an unusual kind of plant, a hybrid developed by off-world scientists and worth far more than ordinary grain. Yet the field was only half harvested. Her father's sudden death had left her with a burden she wasn't sure she could carry alone. She tightened the worn leather strap around her waist and scanned the rows. The mechanical harvesters lay still, broken by the last storm, their metal frames bent and wires dangling. The wind whistled through the stalks, and Ilara could almost hear her father's voice, urging her to finish the work to save the family's honor. She swallowed her fear and walked among the glowing plants, trying to remember every lesson he had taught her. Her thoughts were interrupted by the faint hum of a hoverbike approaching. She turned sharply. A figure emerged from the dust, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a long, dust-stained coat. What caught her attention first, however, were the faint glimmers along his arms and the soft blue glow in his eyes. He was not an ordinary cowboy. Cade, as he later introduced himself, was a wanderer, someone who carried the frontier in his bones but had technology etched into his very being. "You look like you could use a hand," he said, his voice calm but firm. He didn't wait for an answer. His eyes swept over the broken harvesters, the uneven rows, and the fading light. Without hesitation, he dismounted his hoverhorse and walked toward the field, hands loose at his sides, ready to take command of the work. Ilara hesitated, unsure if she could trust him. Strangers often brought trouble, and though the planet was wide and lonely, word traveled fast. But desperation pushed her to speak. "My father, he died last week. The harvest, I can't finish it alone." "If we don't finish it, the trader will take what's left and the farm," her voice caught. Cade nodded without interrupting. "I understand. Don't worry, I'll help you. The field's done when I say it's done." She watched as he rolled up his sleeves. The sun had dipped lower, but he didn't seem concerned about the fading light. Instead, he walked to the nearest row and knelt beside the glowing stalks, his cybernetic fingers gently brushing over the plants, scanning their strength and health. He made small adjustments to the damaged harvesters, tapping wires and connecting circuits with skillful precision. Where a normal cowboy would use muscle and sweat, Cade combined technology and instinct. Ilara followed, carrying crates and checking the plants, doing her best to imitate him. She realized that his calm and steady manner was contagious. She began to feel a small spark of hope. The farm could be saved. Hours passed and the wind picked up. Dust and debris swirled around them, making the glowing crops look like they were alive, flickering in the twilight. Cade remained focused, giving short, clear instructions. "Move that crate there. Watch the row on the east side. It's fragile." He moved through the field with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times, yet every motion was careful, almost reverent. Ilara's fatigue grew, but she refused to stop. She remembered her father's hands, rough and strong, and how he had taught her to respect the land. Now she felt a strange comfort in Cade's presence, as if he understood that this harvest was about more than money. It was about legacy. Suddenly, a loud whirring sound echoed across the field. One of the damaged harvesters had sparked and was teetering dangerously close to toppling. Cade acted quickly, using a small magnetic stabilizer from his belt to anchor the machine. The hum of energy and the faint blue glow from his enhancements lit up the surrounding stalks. Ilara held her breath. Within moments, the harvester was secure and Cade straightened, brushing dust from his coat. "Close one," he said, giving her a small smile. Ilara nodded, her own nervous tension easing. She realized that with Cade's help, the impossible might be possible. As night fell, the stars of the alien sky shimmered brighter than she had ever seen. The twin moons rose, casting silver light over the field. In the distance, the trader's ship appeared, hovering just above the horizon. Ilara's stomach tightened. If the harvest wasn't finished, they could lose everything. Cade noticed her gaze and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry," he said again. "We'll finish it." Together, the next few hours were a blur of motion. Cade moved seamlessly between rows, adjusting broken harvesters, securing crates, and guiding Ilara. His enhancements gave him strength, precision, and speed beyond ordinary humans, but what impressed her most was his patience. He taught her to move carefully, to notice the smallest details in the glowing plants, to respect the crop's rhythm. In one quiet moment, Alara asked, "Why do you help me? You could just ride on." Cade paused, brushing his fingers along a stalk. "Because someone has to," he said softly. "Because this land deserves it, and because your father's work shouldn't go to waste. That's worth more than anything else." The sincerity in his voice struck her. She nodded, feeling a strange warmth for a man she had just met. He was no ordinary stranger. He was a cowboy of the future, blending the honor of old-world ranchers with the tools of a new age. As the night grew colder, they faced one last challenge: a sudden swarm of small, alien pests attracted to the glowing crops. They darted across the field like tiny sparks of fire, threatening to eat the harvest. Cade acted quickly, using a combination of tech and strategy. He activated small, harmless force fields to steer the swarm away from the most valuable crops, guiding them toward empty fields. Alara followed his lead, helping where she could. By midnight, the field was mostly safe, the pests diverted, and the first rows of harvested crops stacked neatly in crates. Alara leaned against the edge of the barn, exhausted but relieved. Cade approached, his enhancements still faintly glowing in the moonlight. "First day's done," he said, surveying the field. "Tomorrow we finish the rest. Don't worry about a thing." Alara smiled weakly, a spark of hope igniting in her chest. For the first time since her father died, she believed that the farm could survive, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in the universe anymore. The two of them stood in silence, watching the twin moons reflect off the glowing crops. A new day would bring new challenges, but for now, the field was alive and the harvest was protected. Cade's words echoed in her mind, simple and strong. "It's done." For Alara, it was more than a promise. It was a beginning. The morning sun rose slowly over the plains, painting the fields in shades of gold and orange. The twin suns were not fully up yet, but their glow touched the horizon, casting long shadows across the crops. Alara was already awake, standing at the edge of the field, her hands gripping the worn leather strap of her apron. Her body ached from the previous day's work, but her mind was alert. She could not afford to waste a single moment. The harvest was still unfinished, and the trader's ship hovered in the distance, a constant reminder of the stakes. Cade emerged from the barn, stretching his long arms and flexing his cybernetic fingers. He had slept under the stars, using the faint glow of his enhancements to keep watch over the farm while Alara rested. He looked over the field, eyes flicking over the glowing crops, the damaged machines, and the crates stacked in neat lines. There was a calm determination in his stance that made Alara feel safe, even in the face of so much work. "Ready?" he asked, voice steady, though a hint of humor softened the edges. Alara nodded. "We don't have a choice. If we don't finish today, half the crop will spoil." She glanced at the crates, then at the broken harvesters. "The machines are still damaged. Some might not work at all." Cade gave a small smile. "Then we'll work around them. There's more than one way to get this done." She watched as he moved through the field, his enhancements humming softly, his hands precise as he repaired a bent harvester. Sparks flew in small bursts, lighting up the surrounding stalks. Cade's movements were a mix of strength and grace, a combination of old-world cowboy skill and new-world technology. Alara felt a flicker of admiration. This man could do what she never could, and yet he moved as if the land itself mattered more than the reward. The first challenge came quickly. A gust of wind, stronger than anything they had seen yesterday, whipped across the field, bending the glowing stalks dangerously. Alara stumbled, almost dropping a crate, and the plants swayed violently under the force of the wind. Cade moved instantly, reaching out and stabilizing her with one arm while using the other to anchor the crates. "Easy," he said, his voice calm, almost like the wind didn't exist. "Watch the rhythm of the field, don't fight it, move with it." Alara tried to follow his advice. Slowly, carefully, she adjusted her steps, matching the sway of the crops. She realized that farming was not just about strength, it was about understanding, timing, and patience. Cade seemed to know every inch of the field, every stalk's movement, almost like he could feel it in his body. Hours passed in a steady rhythm of work. Cade repaired the damaged harvesters, pulled crates across uneven ground with his hoverhorse, and instructed Alara on how to handle the fragile glowing stalks. She worked tirelessly, carrying heavy crates, stacking them, and adjusting the rows. By midday, the sun was high and the heat pressed down on them, but Cade's presence made the work feel less unbearable. "You're doing well," he said during a brief pause. Better than I expected. Alara wiped sweat from her brow, feeling a mix of pride and exhaustion. I have to do this. My father, he would want it done. He wouldn't have left it unfinished. Cade nodded, his gaze softening. Then we'll do it together. It was not just the labor that tested them. Around midday, a group of raiders appeared on the horizon, small figures moving across the plains. They were looking for valuable crops, and the glowing stalks of Alara's field were an obvious target. Her heart pounded as she realized how vulnerable they were. Cade did not panic. Instead, he quickly assessed the situation. Stay behind the crates, keep low, watch my signals. He moved ahead, using his hoverhorse to create a diversion. The raiders, thinking the crops were unguarded, rushed forward, only to be stopped by a clever trap Cade had set using harvested stalks and some leftover farming tech. Alara watched, amazed, as the raiders' momentum carried them into the barriers, slowing them down long enough for Cade to guide them away without harm. He was precise, efficient, and yet careful not to hurt them more than necessary. When the last raider finally retreated, Alara exhaled a sigh of relief. You didn't even touch them, she said, astonished. Cade shrugged. No need, the crops are more important than fighting. The afternoon brought another challenge. A section of the field had been damaged by the previous storm more severely than they first realized. Half of the harvesters were unusable, and the soil was uneven, making it difficult to move the crates. Cade studied the ground, then used a combination of his enhancements and simple ingenuity. He adjusted the hover horse's attachments, creating a makeshift pulley system that allowed them to lift and move the heaviest crates without destroying the plants. Alara followed his instructions carefully. Lift slowly, steady, perfect. Cade's voice was constant, guiding her through the difficult process. For the first time, she felt like the field was no longer an enemy. Together, they were mastering it. During a brief rest, they sat on the edge of the field, watching the glowing stalks shimmer in the sunlight. Cade glanced at Alara. You're stronger than you think, not just with your hands, but with your mind. Your father taught you well. Alara nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She thought of her father's hands, strong and calloused, and how he had guided her through every season of the farm. She realized that today she was continuing his work, not just for herself, but for him, for the farm, and for the life he had built. As the afternoon wore on, a sudden problem arose. One of the crates at the far end of the field began to collapse under its own weight. The harvested crops threatened to spill and spoil. Cade sprinted toward it, cybernetic legs propelling him faster than any normal human could move. Alara ran after him, adrenaline pumping through her veins. Together, they managed to secure the crate, stacking it carefully and adjusting the others around it to prevent further accidents. You're learning fast, Cade said, smiling faintly. Alara shook her head, laughing softly despite the exhaustion. I'm just following you. But she knew it was more than that. She was learning how to survive, how to lead, and how to honor her father's legacy. Cade had shown her that even in the most difficult circumstances, there was a way to persevere. As the sun began to set, they faced one final test for the day, the alien pests. Small, luminous creatures drawn to the glowing crops began to appear in swarms. Their movement was rapid, unpredictable, and destructive. Alara froze, fear gripping her chest. Cade acted quickly, activating a small force field that directed the pests away from the most valuable rows. Keep moving the crates, he shouted. Guide them toward the empty section. Alara followed his instructions, using what she had learned about the field and the crops to help steer the swarm. For a moment, it seemed hopeless. The pests moved too fast, too many, but Cade's calm presence guided her. Slowly, methodically, they protected the harvest. By nightfall, the field was safe, the crates were stacked, and the last pests had been diverted. They stood in the middle of the glowing rows, breathing heavily, sweat and dust covering their faces. Cade looked over the field and nodded. That's it for today. We've made real progress. Tomorrow, we finish. Alara felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. For the first time since her father died, she felt hope. The field was still standing, the crops were safe, and Cade had shown her that she was not alone. She realized that the farm could survive, that she could survive, and maybe, just maybe, she had a chance at something more. A future where the land thrived and her father's dream lived on. As the twin moons rose in the alien sky, casting silver light across the glowing field, Alara turned to Cade. Thank you, she said softly. Cade smiled, a faint glow in his eyes. Don't thank me yet. There's still work to do, but for today, it's done. Alara nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. The field was not finished, the harvest was not complete, but they had survived the first day. And that was enough to give her courage for the days ahead. The morning light spilled across the fields, painting the glowing crops in soft gold and silver. Alara stepped outside the barn, her muscles stiff from the previous day's labor. The hybrid stalks swayed gently under the twin suns, almost alive in their soft glow. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of her father's words. The land is alive. Treat it with care and it will reward you. Today, the reward felt closer than ever, but the challenge also loomed larger. Cade appeared beside her, his cybernetic fingers glinting in the sunlight. "Ready for the next round?" he asked, his voice calm but steady. He had spent the night examining the field and repairing what little machinery they could use. His enhancements gave him an almost supernatural sense of the farm, and Alara found herself trusting his judgment completely. "Yes," she replied, her voice firm despite the aches in her arms and legs. "We finished today." They moved quickly. Cade directed her to the rows that were most fragile, explaining how to handle the stalks carefully while stacking them into crates. She followed his instructions, feeling more confident than yesterday. The rhythm of their work was almost like a dance, each move measured, precise, and coordinated. Cade's calm presence guided her, and for the first time, Alara realized she was learning more than just harvesting crops. She was learning how to survive, how to trust, and how to act with courage under pressure. Mid-morning brought the first real test. The automated crop press, a machine designed to compress the harvested plants for easier transport, had malfunctioned. Sparks flew from its core and a low hum of overloaded energy filled the air. Cade assessed it quickly. "If this breaks, we lose half the crop." "I'll fix it, but I need you to stay clear and keep the crates safe." Alara nodded. She watched as Cade knelt by the machine, his cybernetic arms glowing faintly as he worked. He removed damaged parts, replaced wires with precision, and recalibrated the press. Sweat ran down his brow, but his movements were steady, methodical. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher in the alien sky, but finally Cade stood and tested the press. It hummed smoothly, compressing the harvested stalks into neat bundles. Alara let out a long breath. "You did it," she said. Cade smiled faintly. "We did it, together." The field, however, was far from safe. As they moved to the last sections, the alien pests returned. This time they were larger, faster, and more aggressive, drawn to the sweet glow of the hybrid crops. Alara froze for a moment, fear gripping her chest, but Cade placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Remember the rhythm," he said. "Don't fight them, work with me, guide them away from the crops." Together, they used a combination of her knowledge of the land and his technological skills. Cade activated small, repelling fields that steered the pests, while Alara moved crates and guided the creatures toward empty sections. It was exhausting, both physically and mentally. Her hands were raw, her body ached, and the swarm seemed endless. But she learned to trust Cade's instructions, and slowly, systematically, they diverted the pests. By midday, the pests were gone, and the field looked almost whole. Yet a new challenge awaited. One of the raiders from the previous day had returned, this time with a small drone hovering above the crops, scanning for weakness. Alara felt her stomach tighten. They were not only fighting the elements and nature, but also other humans who sought to steal their harvest. Cade noticed her glance. "Don't worry, I have a plan." Using a combination of the crop press and crates, he set up a clever diversion. When the drone approached, the press emitted a bright, harmless flash, temporarily blinding its sensors. Alara moved silently behind the machine, ready to pull crates and shield the crops. The drone buzzed and hovered, confused by the sudden interference, and then retreated. Alara let out a long sigh. "I can't believe that worked," she said. Cade shrugged. "It's all about thinking ahead. Out here, survival depends on planning and action, not just strength." As the sun reached its zenith, heat pressed down on them. Cade and Alara worked tirelessly, moving rows of glowing crops into neat bundles, repairing broken crates, and carefully navigating the uneven terrain. Alara's confidence grew with every successful row. She realized that the land, the crops, and even the challenges around them were teaching her more than she had ever learned from books or her father's instructions alone. During a brief pause, Cade looked at her. "Your father was a smart man. You've got his instincts, even if you don't see them yet." Alara smiled, though exhaustion pulled at her lips. "I hope I'm honoring him. I hope I'm doing this right." You are, Cade said simply. Every move you make shows it, that's all he would have wanted. They resumed work, moving through the rows with a rhythm that felt natural, almost effortless. By late afternoon, they had harvested most of the field. Only a few rows remained, the ones closest to the barn and the damaged terrain. These were the hardest, uneven soil, stubborn stalks, and the looming threat of pests and raiders. Cade moved ahead, assessing the terrain and planning the safest route. We take it slow, he said. No rushing, one step at a time. Ilara followed him, her movements deliberate and careful. Together, they navigated the last rows, carefully stacking harvested bundles and securing them for transport. Each completed row felt like a victory, a small triumph over the challenges that had almost broken her spirit. As evening approached, they faced one final test, a flash storm, sudden and fierce, sweeping across the plains. The glowing stalks bent violently and the crates threatened to topple. Cade acted quickly, using his hoverhorse to anchor the most unstable sections and guide Ilara through the chaos. Rain and wind lashed their faces, but they pressed on, determined to finish the harvest. Finally, as the storm began to pass and the twin moons rose, casting silver light over the fields, they completed the last row. Ilara stood, drenched and exhausted, but triumphant. The crates were stacked, the pests were diverted, and the harvest was safe. Cade stepped beside her, his cybernetic arms humming softly. He looked over the field, his expression calm but satisfied. "It's done," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet plains. Ilara felt tears prick her eyes. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Her father's work had been preserved. The farm was safe. And for the first time in days, she felt hope. Hope that life could continue, that she could survive, and that she was not alone. They sat together at the edge of the field, watching the glow of the harvested crops under the twin moons. Cade didn't speak, but Ilara knew he was there, steady and reliable. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that the land, the farm, and even the life she had feared was lost could still thrive. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by the gentle shimmer of the hybrid stalks, Ilara realized that survival was not just about hard work. It was about trust, courage, and learning from those who walked beside you. Cade had shown her that, and together they had conquered the challenges of the field. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new trials, perhaps more pests, perhaps more raiders, perhaps new obstacles they had yet to imagine. But for now, the harvest was complete, and that was enough. The field glowed softly in the moonlight, a symbol of perseverance, partnership, and hope. Ilara turned to Cade. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave her a small smile, faintly glowing eyes reflecting the silver light. "We're not done yet," he said, "but for today, it's enough." And in that quiet, silver-lit night, the two of them rested, knowing that together, they could face whatever the frontier would throw at them next. The morning air was crisp and clean as the twin suns rose over the horizon, spilling gold and silver across the plains. Ilara stepped out of the barn, her muscles sore but her spirit light. Last night she had slept under the stars, listening to the soft hum of the alien wind and the faint glow of the harvested crops. For the first time since her father's death, hope felt real. Cade appeared beside her, his cybernetic fingers flickering with soft blue light. "Ready?" he asked. He had been awake long before her, checking the last crates and inspecting the rows one more time. "Yes," she said firmly. "Today we finish it all." The last few rows of the field waited for them, stubborn and uneven. The soil had hardened after the recent storm, and some of the glowing stalks had been damaged. Ilara felt a pang of worry. These rows were the most important. Their completion would mean the harvest was fully secured. Cade moved ahead, examining the field carefully. "We take it slow," he said. "Measure every step. One misstep and we risk the crops." Ilara nodded, following him. Together, they moved through the glowing stalks, careful and deliberate. Cade demonstrated how to bend the fragile plants without breaking them, how to lift crates safely, and how to maneuver the damaged terrain. Ilara absorbed every movement, every instruction, her confidence growing with each step. Hours passed, and the suns climbed higher. Sweat ran down her face, and her hands ached from handling the crates, but she refused to stop. Cade moved with efficiency, repairing small issues as they arose and keeping pace with her. The rhythm of the field became almost hypnotic, the soft glow of the stalks, the hum of the repaired harvesters, the quiet determination of two people working as one. By mid-morning, a new threat appeared. A rogue swarm of alien pests, larger and faster than the ones from the previous days, emerged from the far edge of the plains. Alara froze for a moment, fear gripping her chest, but Cade placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Remember what we practiced," he said. "We guide them, not fight them. Work with me." Together, they diverted the swarm, using the crates and the small, repelling devices Cade had crafted. Alara moved quickly, using the lessons she had learned over the past 2 days. Slowly but surely, they guided the pests away from the remaining crops, protecting the harvest without harming the creatures. Relief washed over her as the last pests disappeared, retreating into the distance. The field was safe again, but another challenge soon appeared. A small group of raiders had returned, drawn by the glow of the crops. This time they had brought more advanced technology, a hovering drone equipped with sensors and small grappling claws designed to steal the bundles. Alara's heart raced, but Cade remained calm. "We've done this before," he said. "Stay focused." Using a combination of speed, strategy, and the terrain, Cade set up a clever series of diversions. The crates and harvesters formed a maze, forcing the drone to navigate slowly and clumsily. Alara moved alongside, shifting crates to block paths and guide the machine away from the most valuable bundles. After tense minutes, the drone retreated, confused and defeated. Alara let out a long breath. That was close." Cade shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. "Too close, but it's done now. Nothing else can touch the harvest today." The rest of the day was filled with steady work, securing the final rows and arranging the bundles for transport. Cade showed Alara how to reinforce the crates and stack them to prevent any damage. The field, once chaotic and half-finished, now looked orderly and alive with a soft glow from the hybrid stalks. As the afternoon sun dipped toward the horizon, the trader finally arrived in person, landing his small ship near the edge of the property. He stepped out, examining the field and the neatly stacked bundles. Alara's stomach tightened. This was the moment that would determine whether her father's work and her own efforts had been enough. The trader moved slowly through the field, touching the stalks, checking the crates, and nodding in approval. "I've never seen a harvest done so efficiently, especially on a field this damaged," he said. His gaze swept over Cade and Alara. "You've protected it well." "The price will be fair." Alara's chest lifted with relief. Her father's promise, the value of the hybrid crops, and their hard work had all come together. She glanced at Cade, who simply nodded. No words were necessary. The harvest was safe, the farm could continue, and the legacy was secure. But there was one final challenge. As the trader's attention was focused on the crop, a flash of movement caught Alara's eye. A rogue pest, large and aggressive, darting toward the final crates. Without hesitation, she leapt into action, moving swiftly to block it. Cade followed, activating a small repelling field to guide it away. Together, they secured the last bundles. The pests retreated once more, leaving the field completely safe. Alara stood, breathing heavily, her body aching but her heart soaring. She looked across the glowing rows and realized they had done it. Every bundle, every stalk, every fragile plant was now harvested, protected, and ready. Cade stepped beside her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "It's done," he said quietly, the weight of the words settling over them. Alara's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of relief and triumph. "It's really done," she whispered. "The farm, it's saved." They walked slowly through the field, touching the glowing stalks, feeling the energy of the land and the success of their work. Cade's presence was steady and reassuring, a silent promise that she was not alone in facing the challenges of the frontier. As the twin moons rose in the sky, casting silver light over the plains, the two of them paused at the edge of the field. Cade turned to Alara. "Your father would be proud," he said softly. "And so am I," Alara nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Thank you for helping me." "For showing me how to do this." Cade gave her a faint smile. "We did it together, that's what matters." The trader called them over to finalize the deal. Alara watched as he counted and weighed the bundles, satisfied with the quality and the care they had taken. She realized that today was more than just finishing a harvest. It was a test of courage, skill, patience, and trust. They had survived storms, pests, raiders, and broken machinery, and yet the farm had endured. When the trader finally departed, leaving the promise of payment and future trade, Alara turned back to the field. The glowing stalks shimmered under the light of the twin moons, and she felt a sense of peace she had not known since her father's passing. The farm was alive again, thriving and safe. Cade leaned against a crate, watching her with calm eyes. "What now?" he asked. Alara smiled, her exhaustion giving way to determination. "Now we rebuild, we care for the land, and maybe we make it even better than before." He nodded. "Then we start tomorrow." But for now, they allowed themselves to rest. They sat together at the edge of the field, looking over the glowing rows, listening to the hum of the repaired machines and the soft rustle of the hybrid stalks. The night was quiet, except for the occasional whisper of alien wind, carrying the scent of fertile soil and hope. Alara realized that survival wasn't just about strength or skill. It was about courage, trust, and learning from those who stood beside you. Cade had taught her that, and together they had faced every challenge the frontier had thrown at them. She thought of her father, of his hands, his laughter, and his dreams for the farm. She knew he would have been proud. But more importantly, she knew she had learned to honor his legacy and take her place in the life he had built. The twin moons reflected off the glowing crops, painting the field in silver light. Alara took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "It's done." Cade glanced at her, his soft blue eyes glowing faintly. "Yes," he said, "and it's only the beginning." The two of them sat together, watching the moons rise and the field glow. The harvest was complete, the farm was safe, and hope had returned to the plains. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new storms, and new surprises, but for now they had triumphed. And in that quiet, silver-lit night, Alara realized that she was no longer just the caretaker of her father's farm. She was its guardian, its protector, and its heart. With Cade by her side, she knew they could face whatever the frontier, the aliens, or the universe itself could throw at them. The glowing field stretched endlessly before them, a testament to resilience, teamwork, and hope. And as they sat in silence, the twin moons above, Alara felt for the first time that she was truly home.